going right for it.
Going right for the jugular.
Well, I mean, let's give it the time it deserves. Why not?
Let's let it ruminate. The Billy Zane classic film. I'm just not even gonna waste time with the jokes.
No, let's go. Yeah, let's go. Why are we talking about The Mummy today, Brian? What? Because
we totally glassed over that. We didn't even think about that.
Just in case, why the hell are they talking about this thing?
Yeah, so like, what was it? Was it last Sunday? Last Saturday. Last Saturday was the 25th anniversary. It's crazy to me that 1999 movies are now 25 years old.
Yep, it is the 25th anniversary of the Mummy night of this Mummy's release,
making me feel as ancient as Imhotep.
Oh God, don't say it. But yeah, no, I know that was one that we kicked around. Always wanted to do it on this.
Well, it's too from early on. Like we posted that stupid little meme. Yeah, it was like it's people know that we love this movie.
Yeah, and I just was like, I think the 25th is coming up, 25th anniversary, and I was like, oh, good, it is.
Yeah, no, I was glad that you remembered it because I knew about it, but I had forgotten that it was coming up. So I'm glad that you remembered.
Yeah. So we have backstory on this. We mentioned it in one of our previous episodes. The whole
couple of
Billy
our previous
Zane
episodes
in The Mummy.
Yeah, the whole deal with the Phantom.
Yes.
So good.
He is not in The Mummy, but The Mummy is 1999. It's in him. Good God. The stones are in me.
Oh God. Fuck? Another Egyptian-inspired classic.
Yes. So, but we today are talking about another classic, not the original classic, The Mummy, but the 1999.
Probably the best example of a remake I can think of.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Or at least it's in
in the sense
the upper sphere of that.
Yeah. No, this is one that I think some people maybe when it first came out got treated a little too harshly, but I don't know. It's a good. It's a classic in my mind.
I'd say from Stephen Sommers, it's like his claim to fame.
Yeah.
A lot of his other stuff is not really hailed, but this, it's hard to throw criticism at this movie. It's so fun. It's so well rounded. The effects hold they have a Jurassic Park level hold up where they still look really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say for the CGI, you got that late 90s CGI. The CGI still does pretty well in this.
I think around that time period, there was the thing where there was so much money put on it that it was kind of grounded in a realism to an extent, but also the effects artists were given a lot of time, which I think is the most important part of that.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of aspects to why older CGI tends to hold up a lot better, because I think it's a number of factors they're given time. I think because it was so much more expensive back in the day, there was a more heavy usage of grounded realism in grabbing things from the real world on the set, doing everything to its absolute maximum extent, and just allowing all this time and getting reverence of the high cost for it. All those elements make for very, very well-rounded and very high-pressure cooker situations. So
yeah,
I think that's where that all comes from.
No, and this one definitely has a charm to it that I enjoy. It's a movie that I think I always like to go back and watch again. And I will admit, the very first time I saw it, I think this would have been maybe one of the last movies I rented on VHS.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I think I remember we got the VHS copy of this.
And I'm actually not a huge fan of the UHD masters of this. I think the definitive versions are the Blu-ray masters. They really do look better. The UHDs are kind of washed out and don't think that they look particularly great. There's some scenes that stand out better than others, but overall there's a lot of weird overexposure things going on. I tend to prefer the Blu-rays myself.
Yeah, I think this was one of the last ones. It might have been the last, or certainly towards the end, because right around the turn of the century and getting into the early 2000s, DVDs became, more DVD players became more affordable.
Yeah.
And then we got a DVD player a year later.
Fell off the back of Dom Toretto's truck.
Yep. Did that old classic, less fast, not furious. But I remember watching this one the first time I ever saw it. I mean, I was younger, and it definitely gave me some nightmares the first time.
Oh yeah, I still I remember kind of we were talking with The Ring, that sequence where he gets the Egyptologist in the square surrounded by all the people.
Mm-hmm.
That shot just still haunts my nightmares.
That is a great
There's something about that level of the transformation, like where he kind of like has skin, but it's still like decrepit.
Yeah.
Like it's just so creepy. Like that's the most creepy iteration of him for me.
Well, it's like so weird seeing the emaciated form of the Egyptologist.
Yeah.
Sitting in there and everyone's backing away. And the music too. This is another
Jerry
one.
Goldsmith, man. Jerry freaking Goldsmith.
Yeah. What a great score for this. Like the music really takes you through it and tells a story.
Like that man, like this was his absolute, like he was hitting like his pinnacle prime. Like he had already done all the Star Trek scores and all this stuff. I mean, he had so much experience at this point, and it just like all came out in this movie. Like this was his Indiana Jones, so you know he went hard. He went hard on this.
No, this is let's just where do we start with this? I feel like that's where it's like where do we start to unpack this one? Because you and I, this is definitely another one that we both quote a lot.
Yeah, see, I don't even know. Yeah, like this is another one of those movies. Like we've said for a number of them before. Like almost every line in this movie is quotable. Like it just sticks with you. Everything is so well thought out, so well performed that it just embeds in your head. And this, like, coming from a movie that is like every frame so good, like the lines tend to stick.
It definitely has that classic Hollywood feel in the terms of how it's shot, how it looks. Yeah. You know, kind of that Errol Flynn style adventure.
Yeah, and I saw that in the notes as well with Stephen Summers had mentioned that about Errol Flynn. And I thought that's such a great comparison because that does kind of shine through, especially in O'Connell's character. You can see that influence. So I thought that was a cool little tidbit. But
picking Brendan Fraser for the role. No, absolutely.
Also, on the subject of Brendan Fraser, I didn't think about this because I rewatched it today and I thought about this. Eric Avari, who was in Stargate and Independence Day, the last time he was on screen before this with Brendan Fraser was Encino Man with Wheezing the Juice.
Oh, God, okay.
Like he was the dude at the 7-Eleven, and Pauly Shore keeps bringing Pauly Shore and Sean Astin keep bringing Brendan Fraser's caveman Encino Man in there to quote unquote wheeze the juice, which is sucking a Slurpee right off the hose. Like, classic cinema.
Classics. But no, this is one I feel that when you look at it, obviously making a movie is hard work.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be issues you run into.
Well, I think too, like with this one specifically, there's something about that, like World War I aesthetic, like the way the world
that turn
was
of early 20th century.
Like from the tactile feel of like what like clothing was, what all like the tangible like tools that were used, like especially for archaeology, which is a big subject matter on this one. Like just like there's a hardcore intrigue for that period of time.
Well, yeah,
and I think that this especially like had its thumb on that button.
Yeah, no, it takes place. It's in the 1920s. You get that, like I said, early 20th century Gatsby feel, if you will, which takes place in the same time era, the Prohibition era here in the United States. Of course, this is in Egypt at the time. But I feel like this was one that would have been fun, as much fun as you can get on a movie, on a big blockbuster movie set, would be this one. Because it just feels like most people on this had fun. At least, I mean, they're professional actors, so they're good at their job.
Yeah.
But I feel like it comes through in the performances, and that they understood not to take it too seriously, have some fun with your characters, and take those moments, make it a little bit more lighthearted to balance out the horror aspect of it.
Well, it's like each character brings like such a unique set of skills to the table.
Yeah.
And it's like every character has their thing that manages to achieve something to push the goals forward. And, you know, you have O'Connell, who's the gunsmith, the action man. You have Evie, who is the definite brain. We've talked about the 5-man band and all that.
Yes.
And then you have Jonathan, which is he's kind of like a wild card. He's kind of like a dumb wild card. Like he's the thief. He's the
wild card.
Wild card.
Because I cut the brakes.
Yeah, like he's kind of a character that Imhotep has no idea how to fight because he's kind of just an idiot. But like, he kind of like, so he like through an unassuming nature, he manages to like slink under the radar and like still prove influence. So
I think that he's kind of like he's a unique and interesting character from that aspect because he does like bring a lot to the table, but it's because of his cowardice, it's because of his thievery, like that he like ties certain things together, like brings certain characters together, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of like the unassuming glue in between a lot of the other things going on, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of great little visual pieces throughout the course of this movie too. Like every character introduction is a really grand visual piece. Like even Evie, who's just a librarian, she like the whole sequence where she knocks over all the bookshelves. Which, by the way, they got that in one take.
Yeah, I've always, I never like, because that's a great scene. I think that's a great like gag. It has almost that. What's the word I'm looking for? Like that screwball kind of comedy feel to it.
But like not to the point where it's not, like overall throughout the entire movie, the comedy of the movie is great comedy, but never to the expense of the seriousness of the story.
Yes.
Which is
they
like
never,
pitch
like,
perfect.
Yeah, it almost has that Ghostbusters level
Exactly. That's perfect.
balance. Like, take the ghosts and Gozer seriously like they do, but laugh at all the quips. Same idea here.
Yeah.
Take the mummy and the monsters seriously, but don't be afraid to laugh when something funny happens.
Like situationally accurate.
Yes. Yeah.
Like never like at the expense of breaking the reality of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think like there are certain movies that have done that. I'm not going to name any specifics, but like,
they named names.
He named names. But yeah, I think whenever you break that reality or break that fourth wall, so to speak, and wink at the audience to like, ooh, isn't that funny? It's like, no. Like it has to be funny in its own internal sphere.
Exactly. You can take it too far in the sense of, okay, have a shootout, but do something funny while you're doing it. You know what I mean? Like, and that,
like you have to be laughing at the expense of a character in a given situation that would happen within the logic of the narrative. Like, so like for example, like whenever the ship is on fire, O'Connell tells the warden, stay here, I'll go get help.
Yes.
It's funny because the guy actually
O'Connell,
does
what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
And it's like, it's believable in that scenario that he would react that way because it's so intense. And he, of course, maybe like it's not even necessarily saying he's an idiot. It's just like given the heat of the situation, it's just a funny little moment. Like,
yeah. And it coincides with O'Connell's character, and he's like, wait here. I'll go get help. And
it
he
plays
just
to how
dives
much of a
overboard.
wise ass he is too. Like,
yeah. And the guy believes him. And here he is, like on this burning ship. It's like, what do you mean? There's only one thing you can do. We got to abandon ship.
like get the out of there. Like,
yeah. Nice little tidbit kind of going off after that when Benny, O'Connell's on again, off again partner.
which is so much, like a million great moments between the two of them. They had to have had a
he
blast.
gives an incredible performance too. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't
He's
think
an
there's-
underutilized
from the actor
actor.
standpoint. Yeah, I don't think there's one bad performance in this, and like including like Arnold Vosloo's performance as the mummy. Like, I mean,
You mean
he
Billy
has, like-
Zane, right? Just kidding. Just kidding.
he only has a couple lines, and all the lines are in ancient Egyptian.
Yeah, which he
And
delivers
did-
perfectly. Like I
Yeah.
don't believe for a second that he doesn't speak that natively.
No,
you know?
yeah, I'm buying him as the mummy. One thing I just wanted to say, like, I find this interesting in when he does the little quip with Benny because the ship's been destroyed by the Magi.
Yeah.
And of course, we skipped over one of our favorite lines that we always quote.
I can't not address it.
The key.
The key.
Where is the key?
And like, dude, that whole sequence, there's so, like, I can't even get into it because there's so many little moments. But it's like,
No, yeah, this is definitely a movie that has so many great little moments that you just can't help but quote it and enjoy it.
yeah, the hallway in the ship. Whenever Evie and O'Connell are running away, she's like, "The map, the map." Relax.
I'm the
I'm
map.
the map.
It's all up here. But yeah, after the ship is destroyed and the parties have been separated by the river, Benny's like, O'Connell, looks like I've got all the horses. It's just like, looks like you're on the wrong side of the river.
And then there's just the beat after that is everything because he just realizes how wrong he is.
Yes, and this is a great thing about how timing is so imperative in comedy. Like,
it's important to have a good editor who like understands that as well, because like a lot of the times you can have a situation where maybe they might not get the comedy and they might cut a little too early or chop up the timing of that. You have to get that right in the edit room as well.
No, yeah, and give credit to everyone there, the performer, for just taking that extra second for it to like kind of sink in for the character. Like, you know, it all the reactions is like, as even when they get a little bit hokey, they feel like you said, nothing ever feels like out of place.
It never breaks like the logic of the world, which is like the most important part. That's such an easy balance to tip over when you're dealing with all of that.
But
it's
interesting
amazing
little
to see
kind
something
of
nail it.
side note on that is I never knew this until The Mummy, but I always was curious, well, okay, yeah, they got to wade the river, but what would that really make a difference? And how would he know? How would he even know? I should say that he's on the wrong side of the river.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to Egyptian mythology, or how they did it. One side, I believe, was he on the East Bank or the West Bank? See, I don't remember now what side they're on, but one side is the land of the living in the Nile, and the other side is considered the land of the dead. So where they're going, Hamunaptra, the city of the dead,
so
depending on which
right
bank you're on. Yeah, like O'Connell knew that, right? Just from he's like, I'm on the right side of the bank of the river. So that was just an interesting thing. I always I didn't realize that, the Egyptians regarded one side of the Nile as specifically for the living and the other side as where they would put their temples and tombs and stuff and such.
Yeah. Also, we talked about, Jonathan Hyde and Eric Avari, the Omid Jalili, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Also in Gladiator, but I caught on to him in later, more recent years. He's been doing a lot of stand-up comedy, and I didn't put two and two together that it was him. Yeah. But he's a really great stand-up comic now. It's cool to see him still killing it, even on his own. Yeah. But yeah, he's fantastic in this movie. He makes every beat that he's a part of click, the getting swatted on the camel when they're riding towards him. Also, while they're approaching Hamunaptra, there's a great piece of day for night. Actually, the first time I ever recognized day for night cinematography. The scene where the sun is coming up on Hamunaptra. You can kind of tell with the light and shadows that it's still daytime. And I was like, wait a minute, they did that in post. Yeah. So no, that's definitely cool little stuff like that. This movie is a mountain of information. This is one. I mean, and if I can understand, if there's some people who just don't care for it, whatever. Adventure action movies are not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah, but this is one where, for what it is, and I love what it is, it doesn't miss on anything. The sound design is great. The whispers of the mummy, his cries and roars that he does.
Oh, even too, whenever there's a lot of clever little tricks, whenever they're doing in the hotel and Imhotep poofs into sand and sucks out the window. I worked this out on my own, just watching it. They just blasted sand in and then ran the clip in reverse for the edit. And I was okay. That's such a clever little trick.
Wow, that's actually pretty I always just thought that was CGI'd the whole thing, but yeah.
But it's simple tricks like that, and you can back in 1999 when CGI was break the bank levels of finances. It's just blast sand in there and then run the clip in reverse. There you go. Mm-hmm. There's your VFX shot.
Yeah, no, very easy,
and
easy
it looks
peasy.
better too at the time. Yeah, practical tricks can if it's clever enough can save you.
Well, and
especially when it's a big budget.
Some of the sets on this too, the sacrificial chamber at the climax of the movie.
Well, the opening shot, the where it sweeps through Thebes, it's kind of like a cobbled CGI situation, but for 1999, that looks damn good.
No, it still holds up, I think.
It's tough to even pick out the cracks in that one. Even though there are cracks, but they're well covered. Mm-hmm. Oof, yeah. I mean, one of the most successful memes that I've made yet that actually kind of got internet clout. I always used to laugh because when I was going on set, I would pack up and I would feel kind of like O'Connell, getting bags of guns, just revving up. And anytime somebody would see me packing up for a shoot, they'd walk up and be like, "Did I miss something? Are we going into battle?
Are we going into battle?"
So I made that meme and I posted it on a couple crew pages and it took off. So it's my one internet success.
And speaking of performances, Rachel Weisz just perfect for this role.
Oh, she killed it.
Gives a great performance. I maintain that she is, I think, I've always thought the protagonist of the movie.
I could definitely see that, yeah.
I mean, but, obviously Brendan Fraser is the more pushed character for
I think because I think he gets it because he's the first of the group introduced in the narrative, and that tends to go with a certain gravitas towards that.
Yeah.
But you could definitely argue that one a couple of ways.
I've always thought, because I think, both Evie and O'Connell go through changes. Yeah. I would say Evelyn, though, has the biggest arc of the characters. because if you look at her situation,
she looks to stand up to her for herself through the course.
Her character journey has that more traditional arc. You know, she reminds me something similar to like, you know, Sarah Connor in Terminator. She's in that similar situation, down on her luck. She's filing things away in a library, and she causes the whole thing to come down.
Yeah,
and in comes the guy. I love what he says too. we don't do. He's like, reaction. What happened? Sons of the pharaohs.
Would you look at this?
Would you look at this?
his timing too is just so perfect.
I know, it's so good. It's just so, it's so great.
I don't care what you do. I don't care how you do it. I don't care how long it takes. Straighten up this mushava.
But yes, her journey from that, you know,
I definitely think that like it's more interesting from the aspect that she would be the protagonist.
Yeah, I've always thought that, or at least, like I said, I feel like she goes through the hero's journey the most out of any of the other characters. Not to say that, you know, if you somehow had a story about, I brought back this 3,000-year-old priest back to life and he wanted to conquer the world, and he brought the 10 plagues of Egypt with him, and you somehow beat him, that would definitely be life-changing, I feel, for anyone.
Yeah.
But in the respect of just the story, the narrative part, I do think she has the biggest arc, or goes through that traditional one, because if you look at her situation there, like I said, similar to Sarah Connor in Terminator, she's down on her luck. She tells Jonathan that her application to the academy, or to the museum, Bembridge Scholars have denied her again because they don't have enough experience in the field.
Yeah. And
she's the one who keeps driving the story forward from that point on. Like, she says, I want to see this guy, which leads to O'Connell. She saves O'Connell's life by convincing the warden to let him go while he was about to die hanging. And she's the one who ultimately figures out how to defeat the mummy in the end. And
I mean, Imhotep is drawn to her because he mistakes her for Nuxanamun. Like, you know, she is kind of at the centerfold of the story in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So I've always said that. But yeah, I mean, that's not in any way to take away from the other characters.
I mean, Brendan Fraser, you could argue, is very much a point man in this. Like, O'Connell is like the man of action, get it done, take care of things aside from the central character type. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you've certainly made a strong case for that. I don't know.
Well, I think for me, only because he does grow again a little bit, because when we meet him after the battle sequence in the beginning,
he's a more put together man as opposed to the literal Encino man we meet. We meet him after he's been desert ridden for years, God knows how long, and then we meet him at the prison, and he looks like Encino Man.
Yes. No, exactly. Yeah. And he just, you know, he seems that he's weathered and kind of like nonchalant with life, but obviously he's attracted to Evelyn, and they get together in the end. But he does, like, you know, grow a little bit too in the way he acts toward the very end of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I've always maintained that I feel like Evelyn has the biggest arc out of anyone in the film.
Also, great line whenever she's looking for Jonathan in the Museum of Antiquities. Mm-hmm. She's going around looking through all the caskets, asking for like the other library assistants. She's like, Abdul, Muhammad, Bob. So good. That. So good. And then like you have the great jump scare. So it like plays from that like comedy / adventure action vibe, and then you get a horror moment. Like it jumps through all these different hoops whenever it feels like it needs to great degree to like poke and prod its audience in good ways. Like,
and again, I'm thinking of that moment when he has the key, you know.
The key.
And like the music comes in at the right point, you know, like and they pull it up slowly. If you go back and watch that little sequence of him showing the key to Evie, and she's like, oh, I don't, like, she doesn't want to see another trinket or another worthless trinket that he bought at the market. And he shows it, and they open it, the mummy theme, if you will, that like sort of haunting choir.
And it's like wispy too. It's like very like in the air, ethereal.
It gets you. Like it I don't know, like I said, the score gets you, and it's like used perfectly in this. And that leads to another great moment when they show the map to the curator of the museum, who, again, a great payoff. They're showing him the map, and he burns off the part of the lost city. As the Americans would say, it's all fairy tales and hocus pocus. Oh my God, look at that. He catches it on fire.
For the best, and then, I'm sure.
But it makes sense, because later on, you get the reveal
find out that he's part of the Magi.
Yes, and he did that on purpose, obviously, to stop
he's
it
trying to
from-
cover the tracks. That's his whole goal.
So a great little plant and payoff, a great little Chekhov's gun moment there.
Yeah.
This one definitely has it all, like I think in terms of things to do, which I've always wondered why then does it not get as good a review as you would think sometimes.
I
Like,
think
what are the-
definitely from people I know that love it, like care about it. Like people don't just like this movie; they love this movie.
Oh no,
Like,
yeah.
Like I don't know anybody that just kind of like passively enjoys The Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a testament to it. It's like I think that's a hallmark of a well-made movie. It's like, look at the people who enjoy it. Do they just kind of like it, like for the most part, like in like broad strokes of like the majority of the people you know it?
Yeah.
Like, do they just kind of like it, or do they like obsess and love it? Like everybody I know that likes this movie is obsessed.
And I think just what's strange to me is if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, it's at like 68%, which isn't terrible.
Yeah.
But I would put it higher. I would at least put it in the high 70s, if anything. The only big flaw I can find from a script standpoint is you could argue it can sometimes feel like two different stories. Like you figure The Mummy doesn't show up. The Mummy doesn't get released until about halfway through, if I remember memory serves me correctly.
You get that great backstory though when they first introduce him. He's kind of like lurking.
Like, I actually enjoy that backstory. You could argue it doesn't have to start there.
I like that from the aspect of like he's kind of lurking behind every corner. Like that scene in the beginning where we first see O'Connell. He's like in the ground coming up, scaring O'Connell off of the site of Hominoptera. He's in the background of a lot of elements in those earlier scenes. So it's like there's a presence. And that plays to that horror aspect where it's like up until that reveal, you get like little spooks here and there, you know, little spookiness going on.
Little spoops.
Little spoops.
It's one of those things where you could argue that the movie could start when we first meet Evelyn.
Yeah.
Or with O'Connell even. And it's like, okay, what's going on? And then let it play out that way. Because I will admit, like when you start to analyze it deeper, it can feel like two movies at one point, like until the Mummy shows up, until he gets released, it's almost kind of like that adventure serial style, and then it pivots to a horror story once the Mummy gets released.
Yeah.
And so that's like the only major flaw I could go with, but even that like doesn't
is a stretch.
Bother me too. Yeah, it doesn't bother me too much because everything else is working so well. Like I'm fine with the performances, the lines. I'm happy to go on this journey with these characters, even if it's taking a little bit longer to get to the Mummy finally awakening, if you will. So it's one thing that I've always wondered why it's not a harsh review that some of the critics give it,
but it's not like hailed and
I just don't even give. I mean, I'm not saying we had to give this Best Picture of the Year.
I just don't even give critics credence anymore. I don't even pay attention.
But I also disagree if anyone thinks that this is just absolute a trash movie. I'm like, nah, sorry.
I don't know a single person that would say that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, like, because when you see like 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like, what?
That doesn't mean Rotten Tomatoes doesn't mean anything anymore.
That's true. Yeah, it doesn't. It's just a number on a screen.
Literally, if I'm even like looking at that, I'm looking at the audience score but even then, I was like, that doesn't mean anything either.
No, yeah.
And the Magi were tragically not, real, but they were based on some pretty cool actual ancient Egyptian mythology. And, they did some gap filling for, the last 5,000 years between to kind of bring them up to speed to the 20th century. But still some really cool stuff. The myth and lore of that culture is awesome that they created.
Yeah.
There's definitely like a whole like subsect that this movie kind of created. And I think
and they get a lot of some of the stuff right. Like there was a Thebes, there was a Seti, there was an Imhotep. He was a real person.
They're definitely like even before this movie was around, I'd heard that name before. So it had that like element of like seeding into existing culture, which is always cool. So it's like it adds to the like believability and the realism of it.
Yeah.
When like you can like eat away at reality a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. If I can recall correctly from my lack of a social life back in the day, I believe that Imhotep was the first one to try and design a pyramid. Way back when, like the step pyramid.
So he was an alien.
Djoser. I think he's the one who helped envision that. Don't Don't quote me on that one, but I think that's
I'm gonna quote you on that.
some useless bar trivia, maybe. But yeah, no, he was a real guy.
He was a real live man. Too, some of the like spoilery bits.
Yeah,
the original script had some very like staunch differences, and I think some of them were like strong-armed into play.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting reading this. Like, I didn't know this.
Yeah, some of them were like from a production standpoint, like because of like finances and not doing more visual effects than they thought that they could handle. But number one on my list for these was Ardeth Bay. They originally planned to kill his character off in that third act as like a sign of strength for the opposing forces, which I thought was kind of cool. But then I'm like, I'm glad they didn't, because he's a cool character.
No, he does, and I think that's maybe a testament to the actor's performance.
Yeah, like he knocked that the hell out of the park.
Yeah, he definitely inhabited that role.
Like even in the funny moments too, like him hanging off the side of the plane, like with the goggles.
Like, how you doing?
And then just whenever they first hand him a gun, like he's clearly used to swords, but then like it's like changing his whole reality. Like you see like a total change in his fighting style. Like he just runs in, literally guns ablazing. Like,
one thing. What are you doing? Get out! Get out!
Kill the creature. Save the girl. Kill the creature. And
well, he does a great job too, and he narrates the opening.
Oh yeah. Like he's the voice of the.
I love too the reveal of the title. You know how he's like, but they would never allow him to be released.
Like I told you before,
disease.
Like I told you before, we actually used this as a meme when we first like launched the socials for the podcast.
Yes,
a buddy of mine, when we were up in Maine, we got drunk and we were hungover as like the next day, and I was just sitting there watching the VH because we only had a VHS tape up at the cabin. We had a VHS tape of The Mummy, and I was watching it, and I was like, "This is what I feel like right now." And I'm watching the intro sequence, and it's like,
"For he would arise a walking disease, a plague upon
mankind,
power over the sands, and the glory
of invincibility."
And then I'm just like, glory in that always gets me too.
Of invincibility.
Yeah, the dude absolutely sold that home.
Like I said, I don't feel like anyone, even if they didn't have fun, I don't feel like anyone phoned it in too much.
No, definitely not. Definitely
not to say there aren't some flaws and some continuity things.
Everything has
here
flaws.
And there. Every movie's got that. I mean,
I think
we did a whole thing on Jurassic Park about that.
Yeah, I think that this is a case in point, though, that like the right aesthetic, the right like tactile feel of a film can save a lot of like there's not even that many problems in this movie, but like what ones there are in this are completely overshadowed by how awesome it is.
Yeah, like this is definitely what I still love the sequence when they first sound and all that, when they first awaken Imhotep and she's like reading from the book and she's like. Like even that still gets me to this day. Like when she starts reading it and like in her voice.
Oh yeah,
she's reading it's like Yatue, and then boom,
it's like
he wakes up.
The sound design on it is very echoey, very
and then,
like well.
And then Mr. Ismay from the Titanic,
Mr. Ismay. Who's this Freud? Is he a passenger?
Is he a passenger? Comes. You must not read from the book. And then the locust plague that comes and just washes over everyone.
That shot of him just sitting there holding the book saying, "What have we done?" He's covered in locusts. Like terrifying.
It's so good, yeah.
Oh, so good.
Obviously, you can tell we're like fanboying over this. But I don't care.
I knew this was going to be a Geek Out episode. But I to get sidetracked a little bit. Going back, we were talking about Ardeth Bay originally being planned to be killed. They changed that because his character was so awesome on set. They're like, no, we can't do this because he's too cool.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm glad they decided. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like in movie is infinitely better as a result of it. But by that same token, there was another thing. Like do you remember the guards of the Pharaoh that are brought about in that third act?
Oh, the ones that Jonathan awakens.
Yeah, and then they like climb up into the ceiling and fight with O'Connell. They were supposed, like in the original concept of the script, that was supposed to be like the statue of Anubis coming to life and fighting O'Connell. Like the gigantic Anubis statue. But then they scrapped that idea because of budgetary concerns with the VFX. So they didn't feel that financially they could cover it.
Yeah.
So they went for something smaller. But it's interesting knowing that, because like the way that like they show the statue of Anubis in the like early part sequence, and that's the transition into O'Connell's character being introduced. It's like I can see where they were going with like a lot of like the plant and payoff and like story structure elements of that. It's interesting to know that was the plan.
See, this is interesting. Like thinking about that, I'm like, I mean, I think I prefer it the way they did it with the
I agree. It's more grounded.
crazy
and real,
guys coming out. Yeah, I feel like the statue would have been maybe a little too much.
It'd have been a little bit too much on the Scorpion King side of
Yes, yeah. It would have been a little bit too much on this. Like the Scorpion King, like the second one, Mummy Returns. That's where I think you start to get more of that. They went.
Stephen Sommers was given too much creative freedom.
They went overboard with it a little bit.
Yeah, that's an example of your comedy overtaking.
Yeah,
and the realism kind of being shadowed over some of the other elements.
Because if you watch this one, if you've never seen it and you watch the first Mummy, the 1999 one, and you go and you watch Mummy Returns, you can definitely see a difference in the tone. That horror tone
that's what I was going to say too.
Gone.
There's a tonal shift that's apparent.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm trying to like be like unbiased with it. Like if they did have a big giant Anubis statue coming to life, am I only saying that because what they did is what I know, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't see it any other way.
Yeah, I think it's more believable from just there's
more. I am trying to give it a fair shake, but I think that was the right decision to make.
Yeah, well, it was entirely in regards to budget, though. It wasn't for no other reason.
And that was a great but thank God for one sense where it's like, okay, yeah, we can't art from adversity.
Yeah. And we've said that before. I don't know if it was canon or whatever episode we brought that up, but it was sometimes I think the less restrictions you have, the worse off your piece can be, because I think a lot of the times creators overcoming adversity are some of the best aspects of cinema and these types of things.
I'd be interested, thinking back of Gareth Bay and like that, I'd be interested when I was saying about how sometimes like a flaw you could say is that it could feel like two movies. Could you recut this? I've always wanted to do this, but I'm not a good enough editor to do it. I've always wanted to see if I could recut this and like maybe pull the opening prologue of Imhotep's backstory, throw it in like the middle and start the movie with Evie and see if you could piece it together that way. That's just a slight little experiment I've always wanted to try.
Yeah, no, you could definitely try that.
You could try it.
You could try it. I think that's
to.
No, genuinely though, I do think that'd be an interesting experiment. I love stuff like that. Like we've talked, I don't know if it was last week, about Topher Grace and the despecialized Star Wars cuts. There's all kinds of stuff like that out there like that of people going in and retrofitting stories and stuff. And I think that's always like a cool experiment just to see what something would look like.
So going on with like other little tidbits here, when I was talking about the hanging scene.
Oh yeah, so, how did we not get to this? I actually expected to lead with this
at all either.
Oh, you didn't know that? That's a lot.
No.
I've nerded out about this one 1,000 times. I'm actually astonished you and I have never talked about this.
You probably have. Maybe you've mentioned it and I just never went into it more with you.
Because I think there was, I don't know if it was the tape we had or something had like a bonus feature I saw at some point and talked about that.
Yeah.
Or like somebody I knew about it. And it's specifically on set during the hanging sequence, Brendan Fraser, there was a mishap with the suspension rig that was holding him. And he wasn't like fully hung, but he was, I didn't mean it that way. Maybe he was.
Fully hanged. Fully hanged.
He had pants
Red
on.
Red Letter Media would be ashamed of us right now.
They had pants on. They couldn't tell if he was on. The suspension rig just restricted his airway. He wasn't like fully hanged.
Yeah.
And so it just cut off his airway and he was restricted maximum breathing for a very prolonged period of time. And once they realized he wasn't acting, they got him out of it fast and he had to be actually medically resuscitated. But
wow.
So it was a big on set. They might have almost killed him. But yeah, I've talked to tons of people about that. Like, imagine if like they killed the lead actor of a movie. Like mishaps like that have happened.
Yes. I mean, thank God it didn't, because then
thank
I don't
God
know
in
if
this case
movie ever would have saw the light of day.
Yeah, like this would have been one of those tragic cases where like people just don't talk about it because like the industry's so scared of like a redo of something like that, and like it's scary when stuff like the Twilight Zone, for example, like one of the lead actors got diced in half by a helicopter blade.
What?
Yeah, you never heard about that?
I've never heard about this.
The Twilight Zone movie, look it up, man.
But yeah, during the filming of The Twilight Zone, 1982, the movie, the actor Vic Morrow and both of the child actors in that scene with him, Micah Din Lee and Renee Shin Yi Chen, really tragically, all three of them were killed in a mishap with a helicopter crash on set that took all three of them out, unfortunately. It was a really, really tragic accident. It's kind of one of the real horrible stories of Hollywood.
Good God almighty.
Yeah, it's scary stuff, man. Making movies is dangerous, especially back in the day.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Yeah, scary times. On that note,
Yes,
like,
continue.
Let's talk some fun stuff and not horribly depressing.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, the biblical plagues, man. That I think that we said before kind of it dips into history, or perceived things that people know and rides off of people's greatest fears, and biblical plagues are definitely among that, I would say. So I think that that is used to great degree, especially like we said, the locusts, like that's shot.
Well, and there's another sort of callback to the plagues as well when Benny runs into the mummy for the first time.
Yeah.
Great scene when he's like trying to like stop him. He holds out like I think a crucifix first.
Well, yeah, he's holding up every like iteration of religion and like being like
Yeah,
almost
he's like,
shotgun
"Good Lord,
approaching
protect
it.
and watch over me as a shepherd." And it's like he's just still walking, and then he pulls out.
He's like, no,
this,
you don't like that one.
It's so great. It's such a great little character moment. He pulls out these just this
Just
array.
the fact that he even has them. Yeah. Like,
well, it's such a great little insight to his character because we know he's kind of just like this
sniveling little.
Well, yeah, or what does Evelyn call him? Does she call him a nasty little boy? Is that what she says to him? Always get their comeuppance? I know she says that to him.
I think she calls him a
nasty little fellow or something.
Nasty little blighter or something like that. She is British.
I know she says something along those lines to him.
Yeah.
But he is like that smarmy, he'll go he'll side with whoever's the winning side. It doesn't matter. He has no allegiance but to his own.
Since we're talking Kevin O'Connor, we also didn't mention the ending sequence with the camels when he's loading up the camels with all the gold while it's going down. He's off like loading up his treasure and trying to escape. I didn't know this one before I looked this up for research for this, that there was originally planned that he was going to make off with all the gold and they would catch up to him. But they had to rewrite it on the day because like he couldn't get the camels to move. They just for whatever reason on the set they just were not having his presence. It's funny
they were not moving. That's so great.
It's a testament to his character because he is his character is such a piece of it's like they almost like picked up on that. And I think
it shows in that sequence when the mummy's trying to approaching him and he just pulls out this plethora, this long necklace of every different religious iconography as you can think of, and he's switching. But also he has the stuff memorized, so he's not a complete idiot.
Yeah.
Like he knows how to turn a phrase and like turn a situation into his benefit.
Yeah.
And he happens to pull out the Star of David and start speaking in Hebrew, and that Imhotep recognizes that. And
you came back from the desert with the new friend, didn't you, Benny?
Yeah.
Such a good
but
line.
it's such a great little character thing because it shows that he doesn't really have any belief in anything. He's just using it for his own purposes. Like all these religious symbols. It's like, well, what, none of them are going to work because you don't believe in them. You don't believe in any of them. You just have it because it's like, well, maybe if I need it type deal.
Yeah.
So I think that's just, it's like the epitome of his character.
Well, also, I mean, I think Imhotep is a well thought out character too, because I think, I forget who coined the adage, but it's like your best villains, you should be able to believe in their standpoints or something to that avail. But if you can empathize and feel bad for your villains in some ways, I mean, he's come out of a tragic love story.
Yeah.
He's lost the love of his life, and he's trying to, but he's imprisoned for all eternity. It's like not even just like it's his torment spans beyond centuries beyond his own life. So that's like it's one of those kind of situations you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy kind of situation.
Well, no, yeah, and I think that too was an actual, not the hung die that they come up with, but I do believe the idea of when they find his sarcophagus and she's like, oh, the sacred spells, Evelyn's saying the sacred spells have been chiseled off.
Yeah.
So she was saying that this person was not only condemned in this life, but in the next. I do think that was something that would happen in Egypt sometimes. Like people would, like if they would try to just erase you from history.
Yeah. Well, that's also just like on principle a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
like also on the inside of the sarcophagus, like it always kind of creeped me out, like how perfectly legible that was. It wasn't just like scratched; it was like written in perfect, like ancient erratic.
What he writes, death is only the beginning, or something.
Yeah. Also,
how in the hell did he do that?
Yeah, like that always like freaked me out how perfectly legible it was, because it was like he didn't have any tools. Also, his hands were wrapped for one thing. I was like, how did he even manage to do that for one thing? But he's still juicy.
Still juicy.
But yeah, that line, like that bit of writing, "Death is only the beginning," is just a terrifying line too.
Yeah, the scarabs make a huge, like, are a big device in this one, and of course they make another plant and payoff. That's how Benny meets his demise.
Yeah,
and he could have got out too, like, because we do see him eventually get the gold onto one of the camels, which then ends up being, I'm assuming, the gold that our main heroes walk away with at the very end,
that they build their huge house with in the second one.
But he could have been done, but he looked at it and he's like, oh, there's more, I have to go back and get more.
Yeah, and
that is his greed. Is what came up with him. Finally,
it is kind of funny that it's like a reversal of like his greed and everything. Like they leave him for death, and then they're the ones that walk out unsuspectingly with all the money.
And even to O'Connell's credit, he was gonna like try and help him. He wasn't just like, come on, you gotta hurry up.
But it was like a kind of it's not worth it situation.
Yeah, no. But then he was. I don't think he obviously didn't shed a tear for him though.
No, yeah, because he was a pain in the ass and tried to bring him at the end of the world. So screw him. That's it, like also kind of a nice telling moment for O'Connell's character in a way. Like he's a morally gray, but just happens to be slightly on the right side of things. So. Oh no, yeah. But speaking of, we were talking about Imhotep there and his tragic romance story, which condemns him. How about that that opening sequence of her just all painted in gold? Well, too, like I kind of knew this at the time, but like I had it confirmed for me here looking things up. It was like it wasn't like a faked situation. She actually, the actress Patricia Velasquez, she was actually naked and painted for that sequence, which like is crazy. I don't think that would be allowed nowadays. They would come up with some other solution for that. Probably, most likely. But yeah, like that whole, like that, I will stand on this. I think the best part of the movie is that opening sequence. Like they deliver so much information in such an efficient manner. It's nuts. And they totally tee up the whole story. Speaking of other nudity things, I thought this one thing you found. So the scene where Omid, the warden, the scarab is crawling around under his skin, he chose not to wear underwear for that scene or something? Yeah, I had heard this one before, but I was like, I debated going in on this one. It's really funny, actually. I think it was like a period accurate thing. Share this one. I thought this was like, what? I think you should go for it. I've taken a lot of these bits. Well, no, so you got it. So I guess, so for some reason he decided not to wear underwear for that scene. Yeah. When he's being like, his brain, I guess, is being eaten by the scarab. And as a result, like, him trying to like convulse and act, his genitals kept falling out of his pants during takes. So they kept having to like redo it. And they had to like cut around this. But apparently you can still see some of it when if you watch carefully. I mean, maybe it's been completely cut out now. You get a newer. I was going to say, for the 4K version release, it might be the case that's been scrubbed. But. Yeah, been scarabed. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. That was a neat little thing I never knew. I was like, what? I'm scrubbing through it just to see if I can find it. I can't offhand, but some of the other stuff I wanted to mention too. Yeah. Oh, another quote that you and I bring up all the time. Whenever O'Connell's like rallying up, like they're all back at the hotel and like right after they've had like their first like big run-ins with Imhotep. Yeah. Back in Cairo. O'Connell's like laying out the situation, getting everybody in order and like setting a plan. And like he's like, Jonathan, you come with me. And Jonathan's like, I think I was just going to stay at the fort and reconnoiter. Now. So good. But also like the use of the eclipse. Like I felt like that's like really relevant to right now because like everybody's like all afraid about like the situation. There's something super creepy about eclipses and like all like the astrology tie-ins and all the weirdness and like the hand stretched out shielding humanity from God and all that stuff. So that like this and Dune, like Villeneuve's Dune, I thought used like some of the best examples of like using that to like great creepy effect. No, yeah, absolutely. But also, I thought the Museum of Antiquities was like a great set piece. But they all like the ride. We talked a bit about the Revenge of the Mummy ride in Universal. Yeah, they use all the. I believe, at least in the California one, is sadly being decommissioned. Yeah, screw them. I think it's just because like the California location has like no space.
Oh no, they don't. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, great ride. I think like they like used like the character appearances. Like they had Brendan Fraser. Like they had a bunch of. They just like relied on jokes for that.
Yeah,
which I thought was a great way to do it. They talked for a while about taking those out, and I was like, don't ever do that. But like they use the Museum of Antiquities as like a kind of a set piece for the ride, which is kind of cool. But like everything else in Universal, like that ride queue, like you really feel like you kind of stepped into the movie, which is really sweet.
One little thing, I never even thought of this, but you brought it up here when you did your research. Yes, there was actually
we did research this week
during this episode.
No, not always.
Which ironically, this is one that we probably didn't need to really do research.
I was gonna say you and I could riff this one into
oh yeah,
and there's some extremely great use of props in this one. I mean, the book, both of the books with the locking mechanism on the front of it. You know, the key itself is just a fascinating little prop. I mean, it's so cool to look at the way it's a puzzle when it pops open, and a sarcophagus, all like the technology of the ancient Egyptian culture, the way it's portrayed in this, top notch, top tier. And throughout that ending sequence, you have a great lock and key situation plot device where Evelyn is the one who has the ability to stop the soldiers and utilize the language of the book, but she doesn't know what to say in order to do that, which the book itself is the lock, she is the key. So you have this lock and key plot device. You separate the lock from the key in the storytelling, and then you have very interesting conflict going on. I think it's a cool use of that there. And also throughout that ending sequence, you have one of the first instances of a performance VFX involved situation. Brendan Fraser was hacking up the mummy priests, and he was playing off of nothing being present in the real production sense. So I mean, he was having to all just totally fake it, and it was just all pure choreography to nail that. And that was one of the first times that I'd ever done it. It's still, I mean, it holds up, looked great. They did a great job.
But I didn't realize this until just now. The sword thing, the sword that Imhotep uses is Seti's sword that he takes from him to kill Seti, and it's the same sword that O'Connell uses in the end.
Which is a crazy cool fact.
It's a very full circle a great thing. Chekhov's gun plant and payoff example.
Yeah. Like, but it's like I didn't even know that until like more recent watches.
Yeah. No, I didn't even. I'll have to go back and you've given me an excuse to go watch it again.
Yeah, no, it's always fun. It's like too, like for stuff that you love and respect. It's always cool to have like find something you didn't notice before and have a good reason to go back and like revisit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's like if somehow over 25 years, if you've managed to evade this movie, if it's not seen this, check it out. It's like it's absolutely.
Oh
great.
yeah, it's a great fun movie. Has some laughs, has some scares. It's got everything you kind of want.
It's the best mixed bag.
Yes,
type of movie
in a good way.
Yeah, for sure. But it's also got a lot of really cool history in it too. Like so, it's like for research nuts. It's a fun one as well. Yeah. He wasn't like fully hung, but he was. I didn't mean it that way.